I love China. China and India are not comparable at all. If you wanted me to move to China and live there, I would very, very happily do so. I get freedom in China, I get conveniences, comfort, and facilities in China. If you wanted me to move to live in India, I will shoot myself.
Everyone's talking about Apple moving iPhone production to India like it's some inevitable tech revolution. Tim Cook's been making his little PR visits to New Delhi. Tech analysts are writing breathless articles about the great manufacturing shift. And your favorite YouTubers are probably telling you that India is the next China. Here's a brutal truth they won't tell you. It's never going to happen. And I mean never. Now, I've spent quite a bit of time digging through the actual data, the real production numbers, and the behind the scenes chaos that nobody wants to talk about. What I found will absolutely destroy this fantasy. So buckle up, because we're about to take a deep dive into why India will never, ever replace China as the world's manufacturing powerhouse.
When I tell them that India will never surpass China, in fact, Zafir, the reality is that you should never be comparing China with India. These are two different planets. So let me ask you a simple question. What is in your surrounding that has been made in India? Do you have a response to that? Probably nothing. There might be a couple of things from Bangladesh, but there's nothing made in India. Let me tell you, just about everything you see around me, despite that I'm not in China, has been made in China. That is the difference between the two countries.
Let's start with some basic math that apparently escapes most tech analysts and business journalists. According to multiple industry reports, China currently produces 80% of all iPhones globally. That's roughly 160 to 180 million units per year. India? Well, 20% of global production, which translates to about 40 million units, according to Wired's analysis. Apple's grand master plan is to eventually reach a 50-50 split between China and India. But here's where the math gets absolutely hilarious. The US market alone consumes over 60 million iPhones annually, where Apple commands a 57% smartphone market share. So if Apple wants to satisfy just US demand from Indian production, they'd need to produce at least 60 million units. Add in India's domestic market of 12 to 13 million units, and you're looking at maybe 72 to 73 million iPhones minimum. That means India would need to nearly double their current output just to handle these two markets. But wait, it gets worse. If Apple actually wants that 50-50 split they keep talking about, India would need to produce 80 to 85 million iPhones annually. That's more than doubling their current capacity. And here's the kicker. Tata Electronics, India's primary iPhone manufacturer, is already completely running at capacity right now. This is according to industry insiders. So Apple's asking India to more than double production when they're already maxed out. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room that Apple desperately doesn't want you to know about: quality control. And this is where things get really embarrassing for India. In 2023, Tata's factory, which produces iPhone casings, had a 50% rejection rate. Let me repeat that slowly so it sinks in. 50% of iPhone casings produced in India failed Apple's notoriously strict quality checks. Half of everything they made was literally garbage. But it gets worse. A former Apple engineer speaking to the Financial Times summed up the situation perfectly. And I quote, "There just isn't a sense of urgency in Indian operations." Think about that for a moment. Apple, a company obsessed with precision and deadlines, is dealing with suppliers who apparently operate on Indian Standard Time. The quality problems are so severe that Apple tried to establish sub-assembly lines in India in 2023. These are the operations where metal brackets and screw holes are added to key components. Not exactly rocket science. The result? Complete failure. The sub-assembly lines couldn't meet Apple's quality and cost goals, so they quietly moved those operations back to China. This isn't just about one factory or one component. This is systemic. Indian vendors are literally doing automated tasks manually by hand because they can't figure out how to operate the sophisticated machinery. We're talking about a country that's supposed to be a tech powerhouse, and they're reduced to arts and crafts manufacturing for the world's most valuable company. The Financial Times reported that poor yields are a key challenge faced by Apple in attempting to replicate its Chinese supply chain in India.
We make this mobile phone in India. That is not a fact. This phone is not made in India. This phone is assembled in India. All the components of this phone are made in China. The network that has produced this phone is made in China, is owned by China. So every time we use a phone, every time we wear a Chinese shirt, a Bangladeshi shirt, every time we wear a pair of Chinese sneakers, we are paying a tax to China.
Here's the ultimate irony that completely destroys the India replacing China narrative. India's manufacturing expansion still relies heavily on Chinese workers, Chinese expertise, and Chinese components. As one industry insider bluntly put it, you need the expertise from China. Chinese engineers are literally needed to set up production lines in India. Think about how absurd this is. India is supposed to be replacing China, but they need Chinese experts to teach them how to do it? India only does basic assembly and casing manufacturing, the low-value, low-skill parts of the production process. All the high-value components, the sophisticated semiconductors, the precision engineering, that's still coming from China. Indian semiconductor fabrication is 5 to 10 years away, according to experts, and that's being wildly optimistic. The supply chain reality is that China doesn't just manufacture iPhones, they manufacture the entire ecosystem that makes iPhones production possible. As one analyst noted, India only assembles iPhones, while China produces a high fraction of the critical parts. That will not change in the foreseeable future, if ever. Apple is caught in an impossible situation. They want to reduce dependence on China, but every step towards India requires more Chinese involvement. The geopolitical tensions between India and China could become a massive roadblock, but here's the catch-22. India can't manufacture without Chinese expertise, but Chinese-Indian relations are getting worse.
I've worked in US for few years before coming. I think a lot of times you hear people saying, and we have a factory in China, we have a factory in India. I can tell you that our factory in China, the efficiency of the worker is at least 10 times. Right? Here the guy will say, I can only make 25 an hour. Best case, the business plan will be to get to 35 in 5 years. The guy is already doing 250 there.
Okay.
Right? And again, when you go to US, and you'll see the American culture, and you'll say, yeah, these guys they want their weekend free. They can afford to take their weekend free because what they deliver in 9 to 6 is far more what Indian ecosystem can deliver. And that's true.
Bhandari recently pointed out that manufacturing as a percentage of India's GDP is down to just 12%, the lowest it's ever been. Read that again. While everyone's talking about India's manufacturing boom, manufacturing is actually shrinking as a percentage of their economy. This analysis was particularly brutal. However, the underlying reality remains unchanged. The vast majority of iPhone production still depends on Chinese capability, coordination, and supply chains. They lack economies of scale, which results in lower productivity and higher costs. Most Indian firms don't yet have the quality control or technical expertise that Chinese manufacturers have developed over decades.
This is a train in India. And this is a high-speed train in China. And this is a high-speed train in the US.
Now let's touch on something that often gets glossed over in all the cheerleading about Indian manufacturing: basic infrastructure. You can't run a world-class manufacturing operation without world-class infrastructure, and India simply doesn't have it. Power reliability is also a joke. Chinese factories run 24/7 with consistent power supply. Indian factories deal with regular blackouts and voltage fluctuations that can destroy sensitive equipment. Transportation infrastructure is another nightmare. China has built high-speed rail networks, modern highways, and efficient ports, specifically designed to support manufacturing. India's transportation network is a patchwork of colonial-era railways and congested roads that can't handle modern logistics demands. The port situation is particularly embarrassing. Chinese ports are automated, efficient, and can handle massive container volumes with minimal delays. Indian ports are bureaucratic nightmares where containers sit for weeks waiting for clearance. China spent trillions of dollars over decades building infrastructure specifically designed to support manufacturing, while India is trying to retrofit colonial-era infrastructure for 21st century production. So what does the future actually look like? Let's be brutally honest about where this is all heading, because the trajectory is already clear. The quality problems will persist because they're not technical problems. They're cultural and systemic problems. You can't fix a 50% rejection rate by buying better equipment or hiring more engineers. You fix it by changing fundamental attitudes towards precision, quality, and continuous improvement. China will continue to dominate high-value manufacturing because they have the infrastructure, skills, and institutional knowledge that can't be easily replicated. They'll let India handle the low-value assembly work while keeping the profitable, sophisticated manufacturing for themselves. As one analyst put it, manufacturers in India would need to double production to meet US iPhone demand, and the shift still wouldn't solve Apple's China problem. India will become a secondary manufacturing location for companies that need to diversify for political reasons. But they'll never become a primary manufacturing hub for advanced products. They'll be the backup plan, not the main strategy. If you enjoyed this deep dive into manufacturing reality, hit that subscribe button for more data-driven content that cuts through the political hype and business journalism fantasy. Let me know in the comments what other sacred cows of tech analysis you'd like me to slaughter with actual facts and numbers. And remember, in manufacturing, as in life, math always wins. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
And the popular conception is that companies come to China because of low labor cost. I'm not sure what part of China they go to, but the truth is China stopped being the low labor cost country many years ago. And that is not the reason to come to China from a supply point of view. The reason is because of the skill and the quantity of skill in one location and the type of skill it is. Like the products we do require really advanced tooling. And the precision that you have to have in tooling and working with the materials that we do are state of the art. And the tooling skill is very deep here.